All right. First, thank all of you for being here today. It's great to have you at this talk, and it's great to be here at HackFest. So I am Cheryl Biswas, your friendly neighbor to the province next door. I'm also a proud member and founder of the Diana Initiative, where we support women and diversity in tech, and we had a great second year in Vegas, and I encourage you all to come join us again next year. Finally, thank you. And you can find me online as Encrypted. Okay, this is our essential obligatory disclaimer. We all know what it is, but I need to say it so that it makes my boss feel better. So the views and opinions expressed herein are mine alone, and not of any of my employers, past or present, or as far as I know, future. Okay, so let me present to you our agenda for today. We are going to explore an evolution of evil, and there are many stories to be told. We are going to question our choices with IoT. We are going to see who is out there. We're going to talk about money and miners. And then we're going to play a little game of what if. Now, who here loves good, scary stories? Me too. I like things like the Body Snatchers or the Chrysalis, you know, stuff that takes over the world. Well, I'm going to present to you a story about a router haunted by the very firmware within it. Botnets aren't something that's new. They have been around for a while, and they've been steadily evolving past the point of annoyances and inconveniences. They have now moved into the enterprise realm, and they have the capability there to do a lot more damage. I work in threat intel, so my job is to watch for trends and to identify what could really impact the bottom line, the real meaning of business risk. Well, there was no question about a trend this January, right out of the gate. Massive botnets with crypto miners. I thought that was attention-worthy. The thing is, with business, it's not a problem until it's a problem. So things kind of changed around June with VPN filter and the notice from the FBI, and I found myself staying up late to produce a report on the new disturbing trend of botnets. We can all agree it's not new. But it is now November, and as I see it, botnets really are a clear and present danger. We need to look past what it is we think we know about these things, because something wicked this way comes. So let's get started, shall we? When we think of botnets, we usually think in terms of distributed denial of service attacks, right? It's temporary. It's an annoyance and an inconvenience, but it's something that we can get over. Well, let's talk about that inconvenience of a DDoS attack. How many people here use GitHub? Do you remember what happened in February of this year? That was the biggest recorded DDoS attack, 1.35 terabytes per second. That was twice the size of Mirai. Now, Memcache wasn't a botnet per se. It was, however, a bunch of vulnerable, misconfigured servers that could be made into a botnet. And we know we have a lot of those servers out there, internet-facing, that shouldn't be, and they live in enterprises that don't seem to know this. We've got an ongoing problem with shadow IT, but I'm going to save that for another talk. Now, how do I know? Well, I had to go looking. I have two words for you: asset management. Done right, I swear to God, it is going to save your ass time and again. Done the way I have seen it, you are going to get pwned. Now, I want to illustrate this point with the use of misconfigured Memcache servers that were accessible via public internet, because The predecessors were, stop me if you've heard this one before, Mongo and couch databases. How many people have had the fun of dealing with those? Last year, we had a massive takeover in terms of ransomware, huge ponage of Mongo and couch databases. And you can see how well that lesson was applied here. It's only going to keep happening. So by way of quick explanation for people who may not know what Memcache actually means, it's memory caching, and it's done to help boost the response time for database-driven websites. It improves the memory caching. Unfortunately, so many of these had a default insecure configuration that it allowed for DDoS attacks against the UDP packets, and these servers amplified that by 51,000 times. That's a lot of bang for the buck in the hands of the attackers. All right, does everybody here understand or know what the CIA triangle is? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So it's easy to see in terms of impact how this would apply to availability. But what if it also impacts the other two sides of the triangle? According to Martin McKay, who is a global security advocate at Akamai, and a lot of enterprises use Akamai, there are many countries out there who don't even have 1.3 terabits coming in total. So to get hit by an attack at this level would take them down for a very long time. Well, let's talk about our current favorite subject. Imagine a zombie apocalypse of crockpots. Oh my God, why do we have to connect everything? Welcome. Welcome to the connected hell of IoT, where set it and forget it really is a best practice. Default passwords are de rigueur. We have embedded system vulnerabilities everywhere. And we have not even factored in what is a veritable tsunami of unsecured connected devices that are being acquired by the developing world. So botnets were used by script kiddies a couple of years ago in spiteful attacks, right? They were Grinches who took away Xboxes and PlayStations. But now, well, now we've got bigger kiddies to worry about. And spiteful attacks, those have taken on a whole new meaning. Botnets are now one more weapon in a digital arsenal that are the games nation states play. There's no referee and there's no playbook. We have come to experience the impact of DDoS botnets that are built from hundreds of thousands of compromised Internet of Things devices. And this represents a rapidly expanding threat surface. The problem is it's consumer-driven. So the race to the finish line leaves security so far behind it isn't even an afterthought. And there's little incentive for manufacturers to do things better. And who really wants to be a regulator? At the beginning of October, another 9 million inherently insecure devices got added to that botnet trough. But it's not just that the devices in IoT are unmanaged. Jeremy Connelly of FireEye says it's that they just get left out there to languish. They're not updated. And the non-experts who use them have no idea that they've even been compromised. So how about this one? Botnets that are built to download other botnets. Well, that's totally wicked. And Wicked actually is a botnet, which happens to download Omni, Satori, and Sora, the spawn of Mirai. So what we have now is a playground for attackers with botnets and aspirations. And if they don't see the limits to their creations, we should not limit our expectations of attacks. So we all know what happens when source code is made public, and there are numerous variants of Mirai and Satori. But I want you to think hybrid, because there is source code out there for Trojans and ransomware and some very delicious exploits. I'm going to let this one speak for itself. If you don't follow him, Bob Brutus is probably one of the best data scientists out there tracking botnets. He works with Rapid7, and he has been posting some pretty scary alerts all year. So let's see who's out there. I consider Mirai to be the pivotal moment. How many people here remember fall of 2016 when the East Coast went down? Yeah. And there was no Twitter. There was no Facebook. There was no internet because Dyn, which is one of the major ISPs, got DDoSed. I want you to take a really good look at this map. When I see it, I see what an attack by weaponized botnets would look like. Only, this is from 2 years ago at stage 3 of the Mirai attack. And the cost to businesses was significant. So let's look at some of the major botnets since Mirai. Smamanru. This is where it all began for me, when I saw really what marked a pivot from DDoS to monetized attack vectors. Smamanru was a giant mining rig, one of the biggest and most successful cryptojacking botnets that was active. And botnets and crypto mining go together like horse and carriage, completely. This one netted $2.3 billion, and it leveraged Eternal Blue to find and enslave more devices. It used Windows management infrastructure so that it could manage and configure those bots. And this was not something we were seeing in other botnets until this point. Ah, hide and seek. So this came out in January. It was only the second botnet to have peer-to-peer architecture versus conventional command and control. Why peer-to-peer? Much harder to track. It also had a worm-like spreading mechanism so that it could rapidly infect. It differed from the other botnets that were out there, but in the world of botnets, being different seems to be a very good thing. It was constantly being redesigned, with more complex features being added, because why just DDoS when you can do data exfil, code execution, and interfere with device operation? This is a bot that's going places. Ah, but in May, it came back with even more. The magic word is persistence. This, my friends, is a game changer, because before that, you could flush them out of your system with a reboot. Not anymore. In July, they enhanced the system further and added those database servers. And then in September, well, we know how many of these are there. Android devices. Then there's Milo Bot. This one is all about the attack. Holy crap. It is designed for malware versus malware wars. I didn't even know that was a thing. It can hunt for and disable malware on its competitors. It surfaced from the dark web back in June, and it had an unheard of level of complexity, understandably, with its various tools and evasion techniques. These are anti-VM, anti-sandbox, and anti-debug. You don't see that in botnets. Its innards are obfuscated because they have it wrapped in an encrypted resource file. It does code injection, and it does something kind of cool called process hollowing. So an attacker creates a new process that is in a suspended state and then replaced. This, again, is highly advanced for what typically is a DDoS vehicle. Now, the malware on this is nested in 3 layers, one on top of the other, each layer responsible for executing the layer above it, ending with the final one. And the final one uses reflective EXE technology so that it can execute its EXE files from memory without having them on disk, because obfuscation is the name of the game. We all know how hard it is if something is run in memory and not in disk. Pretty much everything takes place in memory with this. And Milo Bot, it can download whatever its bot herders wish. So if you want ransomware, cryptojacking, banking Trojans, spyware, it's ready. How many of us got that FBI notice back in June? 500,000 Soho routers across 54 countries. And this malware strain, it is incredibly complex compared to other IoT malware out there. It was the second one to be equipped with support for persistence after reboot. This one also scans for SCADA components. Think critical infrastructure, power grids. And it has a function to wipe firmware and incapacitate affected devices. This is definitely a nation-state tool. Now, Cisco Talos did a series of really good in-depth blogs analyzing the features and the evolution of this over time. What it discovered was this had code overlap with Black Energy, which happens to be the malware used in the 2 attacks against the Ukrainian power grid in December of 2015 and 2016. It's still being developed. It's still getting enhancements, according to Talos. Yes. In fact, it's new and improved, with 7 third-stage modules like port forwarding, a SOC 5 proxy, and a TCP VPN on the infected device. From Russia, with love. And that brings me to Tori, the latest evolution in weaponized botnet experiments. This one offers a very wide range of multiple CPUs. Now, that's typical for Mirai variants, but what's not typical is the sheer number of variants and platforms that this works on. The security researcher who found it discovered that it was tunneling through Tor. Again, this is something new. And the botnet targets systems with telnet exposed and weak credentials. Oh, what a surprise. But it determines what the system is, and then it uses several versions of the same command to achieve payload delivery. And this botnet, if you haven't figured it out by now, is lucky number 3 for persistence. Oh my God, we've got 3 of them out there now. So it runs 6 methods concurrently to ensure that not only does it get loaded, but that it stays running. You can, however, kick it off by setting things back to their default settings if you're able to. My point, nobody knows what the hell this was designed for. It doesn't show any indication of being meant to DDoS something or launch crypto miners. Exactly. We need to expect the unexpected. Well, show me the money. Who here works in financial institutions, banking, etc.? Okay. So account takeover is a very big deal. This year, we have seen the numbers pretty much skyrocket. Attackers are using botnets in mass efforts for malicious logins. Akamai said that it went from 3.2 billion around January, just the period from January to April, to 8.3 billion from April to May. Now, this is called credential stuffing, where botnets steal information for logins like across the internet. And not just FI is at risk. Every single business is at risk of this. It's an enormous cost to the financial institutions and organizations, and it just is an uphill battle for us to fight. There are days, for example, when the bank sites are just being hammered, and we look at the log reports, and you can see the massive spikes. It looks like a DDoS attack, but it's much more serious. We're also learning that botnets go undetected when they make their attack methods low and slow. They do it carefully over time across several organizations, and they stay in the game without takedown. Well, let's talk about botnets and banking Trojans. Black botnet is a proxy botnet. So that's a chain of proxies that, again, are much harder to track and detect. It's delivering the Remnant banking Trojan, which has been taken down by law enforcement at least twice, and this is its latest incarnation. In March, we had the Gozi banking Trojan being delivered by the Dark Cloud botnet. Now, the Dark Cloud botnet it's representing a new trend where delivery as a service is coming into play because it offers services to deliver malware from several different families. It also uses hijacked computers to change the DNS name repeatedly. We're talking 287 different addresses just over a 24-hour period. Neckers is a botnet you may have heard of because it's familiar in terms of its spam delivery. It is notorious for that. But in August, it did an interesting pivot, and it started directly going after bank employees, sending them phishing emails, and then passing along the flawed Amy Rat. And last, but definitely not least, is Emotet. This is a huge issue for us in banking, but I think it's going to be an enormous issue just about for anybody because it's experienced such a massive level of growth. It's over 50% of the malware that we're detecting. Every day, there is something major with Emotet. And it is now evolved into that multi-purpose, full-service threat that delivers other malware. It's also gone on to spawn QuackBot, which again is targeting FI and brokerages, and QuackBot leverages the powers of PowerShell and Mimikatz because we all know the value of living off the land. So if 2017 was about ransomware, 2018 was all about crypto miners. And there have been some significant pivots in terms of individual level to enterprise. It's not about Bitcoin and Monero themselves, but what it takes to mine cryptocurrency. It's resource intensive, and it just devours both power and CPU, which, of course, is the reason behind the move to enterprise systems. All of those servers, all of that power, yum, especially in the land of data centers and cloud-based resources. So when these are detected, which is hard because nobody's looking for those big spikes in power and CPU in those places, they will get flagged as potentially unwanted applications. So since they're not red flagged as something we already know, not much is likely to get done. Coin miners can be executables, they can be browser-based, or they can even now be fileless. And they run on nearly every platform. My concern is the growing use of exploits like Eternal Blue that get combined with new exploits against vulnerable enterprise systems. Case in point would be the recent critical vulnerability this summer on Oracle WebLogic. Who here has Oracle running in their enterprise systems? Okay, so what happened was we got the notification of a critical, and I mean critical vulnerability. And within 2 freaking days, there was an exploit and proof of concept out there on several different sources, actively being utilized. Now, a heads up, we need to be watching for an exploit tool known as JexBoss, which is doing the same thing on JBoss servers. And there's a whole lot of middleware out there. The reason, in 2016, when we saw the pivot for ransomware, it utilized and leveraged a JexBoss exploit against vulnerable, older, unpatched middleware. Symantec says that it blocked 8 million attacks just in December of 2017. And Zscaler says that attackers attempted to compromise 30% of the vulnerable systems just globally within a 24-hour period. I don't think they're exaggerating. So what if your systems are patched and up to date? You are still at risk to browser-based attacks. And this happens to have been one of the fastest growing areas for attackers because the barrier to entry is low. In June, the Prowly botnet hit over 40,000 web servers, modems, and IoT devices for crypto mining and redirected users to malicious websites. It leveraged multiple vulnerabilities, and it brute forced credentials. The victims were infected with a Monero miner, and then the R2R2 worm, which helped it to propagate. It also installed a backdoor on CMS platforms that were running websites. Now, when you hear Apache struts, you probably know it's bad, and I'm talking Equifax bad. But it gets worse, because now I add the magic words, eternal blue. Zealot offers a whole new level of attack vectors. It automatically delivers malware on internal networks through web application vulnerabilities. And we know there are so many of those, and it's really hard to stay on top of it. It exploits Apache struts, which everybody seems to love to do. It uses eternal blue and other infamous NSA tools to propagate inside those internal networks. And then at the heart of it are the easily compromised routers. And the router of choice? Macrotic, or however you like to say it. Which quickly went from bad to worse because the attackers moved up to carrier-grade routers. Almost 6 months later, and the attackers are still finding more ways to pwn more routers. The fact is, attacks evolve. So we need to ask, where could attackers go with this? What if they are leveling up to nation states, borrowing their state tools and attacks, using their bag of tricks? Well, in this war, the devices that make up an army don't need to be sophisticated when you have so many. The attackers are literally winning in terms of quantity over quality. But that's now. How much damage could weaponized botnets do? Given what we've seen, we should be able to estimate their capability to create extensive outages and to deliver malicious payloads. What is it that we're not taking into consideration in terms of what attackers could leverage next? Most botnets have tasks to fulfill, which means they need to call home. That reveals the CNC server so that you can eventually track them down. Here would be the next pivot. What if they don't have to call home? What if they've just got one job? Go forth and spread, propagate. So what we're talking about here is a wormable botnet that is self-propagating and leveraging some of the best available exploits out there like Eternal Blue and Friends. No human intervention required. Up until now, botnets have mostly been monetized for DDoS and sold on the darknet. But Mirai changed that, and it was used in retribution in a targeted attack against Brian Krebs, and then again in another targeted attack against a major ISP in France. DDoS became a weapon, not just an outage. So let's take a moment and talk a little bit more about wormable and self-propagating. Damage? Michelangelo. It overwrote the hard drive and master boot record. How about massive? Stormworm created a massive botnet. Rapid and far-reaching? The Morris worm spread faster than its originator ever considered and couldn't gain control back over it. There was no way for them to reach out. Think about that in terms of today. How about cost? Well, both Code Red 1 and 2 were among the most expensive in terms of the damage that they cost. $200 million daily. If you want long-lasting, Conficker, which lives in the land of ICS and SCADA, and it is the bane of their existence because it just propagates freely in those older, unpatched systems. There's 2 million new infections a year. And last but not least, for sophistication, there is Stuxnet. Just recently, there was a worm going after Android devices. We know there's a ton of those. Misconfiguration has been an ongoing issue, and we just don't seem to be getting a handle on it. So yeah, I would consider that to be a perfect storm. So let's say from an attacker's viewpoint, which one would you pick and why? Definitely hide and seek for persistence and its tools. If we want a good attack bot, we've got Milo Bot. Sophistication, look no further than VPN filter. Let's talk about harnessing powerful exploits through how Zealot is using them. And then Tori, where we leverage the power of Tor, and we have multi-purpose, multi-platform. What do you get when you combine unpatched vulnerabilities, existing nation-state exploits, millions of enslavable, inherently insecure devices, and self-propagating malware? And what if you could use time delay so that you could evade notice and you could make less noise? Leverage multiple attack methods based on operating systems and establish persistence. Oh, and it's all automated. Let's have some fun with this, shall we? Okay, I'm not technical, so this should serve as fair warning since we talked about lowering the bar for entry. So please do not run with scissors. Oh my God, you can YouTube anything. Now, I found this on hack forums when I went looking, but as much as I like all of you, I didn't want to pay $25. So I sat down and thought, what is the plan? A bot herder's standard business plan is to use exploit kits and then get somebody to click on what you send out, right? They'll click on a dangerous link and deposit the payload on their machine. Design matters. If we don't want to be tracked, we need to use peer-to-peer. We need to have a good hosting source. Bulletproof is the word that kept coming up, which essentially means services in Russia that really do not care what you run because they have no fear. We need to build something called a stub. A stub is the infecting file. And then we need to build a cryptor to wrap that up so nobody can see it. Then we need to go find a vulnerability with a lot of devices, probably a router. And finally, we're going to need a rat because we need to do some remote handiwork on this. So I went looking for a bulletproof hosting service while I was cooking dinner. But as you can see, there is an excellent selection of them, usually overseas, usually Russian. And Pastebin is a great source for things. You don't always have to go down into the murky depths of the dark web. In fact, you rarely have to. I found this hoster, and I want to show you some of the interesting stuff that's on there. Look at that GPON loader. Or how about that Jexbox vulnerability scanner? We were just talking about that one. Oh, and there's a couple of other choice exploitables, like Drupalgeddon. And the Qbot API. I'll just leave that with you. So we've got our bulletproof host. Now, we need a stub and we need a cryptor. I checked out the offerings on Hackform. And you can see there is an excellent selection of choices there. So I thought this looked good. It works on a full range of Windows, and I'm more familiar with Windows systems anyway. It has a terms of service, because there is honor among thieves, really. And the price point seemed quite reasonable. And you know what else? This already gives me a private stub. I've got a stub and a cryptor all together. I'm good. Finally, we need a rat. Remember I said I'm not technical, I need some help, and YouTube is great. So I watched the whole video of how to build myself a rat, and this was, I hate to say it, quite idiot-proof, and it showed me exactly which boxes to click on my router configuration, which ports, what to set up, so that I too could have a router that goes and does dirty deeds done dirt cheap. Now what we need is the source code to build our botnet. Again, GitHub and Pastebin are really, really good choices for this stuff. I found this, and I liked it because it said UFOnet. But apparently a lot of other people like it as well. And it actually was really straightforward to follow. You can build a botnet for free if you just follow the instructions online. It's got zombies and aliens. I mean, I hate to say it, it was really fun. So this will be my simulated demo. And there you go. Pretty much, you have now built a botnet. And you have a stub, and a cryptor, and a bulletproof host, and a rat. Now, we talked about having an exploit on multiple devices. This is a router infection from the Hajime botnet. Just as an illustration, there are really a whole lot more that you can pick and choose from. Now, if you want to upgrade your source code, here's some Mirai that you could probably copy-paste successfully, or Satori, or Sora, which is actually really nasty stuff. And then don't forget your crypto miners. Now, while this is far from over, my talk is. So bring on the flames and pitchforks, because botnets truly are a problem. What do we need to do? We know we need to monitor certain ports because the attackers definitely are. They're going to use their exploit kits. They're going to hunt us down and find us on a lot of open source software that we are already familiar with. The importance of patching cannot be overstated. And it's not just on routers, it's on anything that connects. And we really need to find a way now to watch for these creatures in our enterprise realm, because that's where they're living and thriving, pretty much undetected. I put a few resources up, and I will post this on my site after today so that people can have access to it. There are a lot of excellent write-ups. Like I suggested, Cisco Talos and their VPN coverage, and Bob Rudis. And because it's still almost Halloween. And that's it. Are there any questions? All right, thank you very, very much for coming for my talk.